Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am joined by the beautiful Gabi. Gabi, how are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
I am doing so well.
Good.
It's amazing to be able to work with you on this platform again. And by the time people have watched this, they've seen you on here on a live already once, and I've worked with you over on your platform as well. But before we talk about the reason we're here, Gabi, I want to talk a little about you first. Gabi is the co-host of the podcast In the Woods with our good friend Boomer, as well, who we both love very much. Thank you for setting this up, Booms. As well as the former co-host of the Horror Haven. Now, how did you get hooked up with Boomer? How did you become part of Podcast in the Woods?
Okay, so originally I was on Horror Haven LLC. I started that with Horror Gamer, and we were in the FEP network. And Horror Gamer and I love, hi friend, I love you. He kind of had a bit of a schedule change, and his life kind of switched a little bit around. So it was hard to record together. And I had promised, I had committed to Boomer months before we kind of got a little uncertain about the future of Haven, that I would guest on his show. And I felt really bad because I had forgotten. And he messaged me like, hey, how about this date? And I was like, okay. And I did a guest spot on his show. And when it was kind of figured out that maybe it's going to be at least an extended break from Haven, Boomer asked if I would join, and I said absolutely. So that's, it's not a very interesting story.
No, I'm glad.
I had so much fun with Boomer. He is so interesting. He's so funny, and he's so smart that it was kind of a no-brainer that if somebody like that is like, do you want to talk to me every single week about horror movies? Like, yeah, obviously. Yeah.
And he is like, he's genuinely one of the coolest dudes I know. Like, any chance I get to work with him, I jump on that opportunity. And I'm so glad that you guys hooked up, because that got me and you to hook up and be able to do this together as well.
Yeah.
But you've also participated in International Horror Watch Club during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And a big thing for me that I wanted to talk about, because on a personal level, you're a big mental health and addiction advocate. Mental health and addiction are two of the things that I don't think can be understated as one of the biggest problems in this country that we have. And there's always this stigma around mental health where it's you're crazy, you're insane, and that's not the case.
No, really,
a chemical imbalance is not your fault. It is not your fault.
Yeah.
And it does not make you a pussy to go and get help.
Yeah.
It actually makes you very strong to be able to say, I can't do this on my own. I need someone to help me, so I'm healthy for myself and the people around me. So
I say proudly to anybody who will listen, I've been in therapy for a long time. And I'll keep doing it until my therapist is literally like, I can't stand you anymore. Until I put my own therapist in therapy, I'm going to keep doing my therapy.
Right. Well, it's one of those things where we all need someone sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is. And addiction is the reason I don't have my mother anymore. And, I'm with you. It's a disease. Addiction is a disease. Yeah, you made the choice to start, but after that, you would have never known where your life could take you.
It's the thing with addiction, though. You did make the choice to start. You chose to take whatever you took. But if you are an addict, you're born an addict. It doesn't matter what you become addicted to. Some people are lucky enough to become addicted to things that are healthy for them.
Like horror movies.
Like horror. Yeah. But I don't know. Some people exercise. I don't get it, but that's fine. But do you have that choice in your head? That's one of the things that I think people, when they're like, well, if you choose to do it, you have to you have to deal with the consequences. It's like, have you never been young?
Right.
You lost your mom, and I lost my sister.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, did she even think to make the choice that I'm going to move from what I'm doing to heroin? Was it even a choice in her head? I mean, that's
Well,
when
and
you
you
get
got to
into a
think,
little bit more
especially
gray
with,
area, but
well, especially with, the prescriptions that we have, sometimes it's the logical step for some people to make that jump.
yeah,
And when we say addiction is not always just drugs and alcohol. People
yeah.
have gambling addiction, sex addiction, addiction to purchases, shopping addictions. Addictions can come in so many shapes and sizes. And
Every single one of them can ruin your life.
exactly. So, also, you have a small part in a film coming up. What can you tell us about that?
Okay. So when I was doing Haven, Horror Gamer and I made a friend in Canada. He's a YouTube guy. His name is Stephen Harold. His channel is The Ginger Snaps Here. And he's hilarious and he's fun. And we had him on the show a few times, and he made a Halloween parody movie. It's called The Night He Babysat. And we promoted the hell out of this short film. It was so good. It was so funny. It was him, his daughter, and Michael Myers. And Michael Myers was babysitting his daughter, which is, I mean, just the idea is hilarious. And
Yeah.
he did it so well. It was so good. And I don't know how YouTube works. I have never done this before. He's at like 170 some thousand views for his little tiny channel.
That's
And
awesome.
that makes me proud,
Yeah.
just to be his friend. But he decided to do a sequel. So he asked me and Horror Gamer to be in the sequel as podcasters. So I can do that.
Tell him if he wants some help promoting it, send him my way. I'd love to learn how horror started for him as well.
I will. You will love him. Hi, Steven.
Yeah, send him my way. I'd love to work with him. So in order to be a horror podcaster, Gabi, in order to be in horror films, horror had to start for you somewhere. So I want to go back to the past and talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And Gabi, your first horror movie was?
Halloween 2. Oh, it just makes my heart warm to even think about that movie. God, I love that movie.
Do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen it?
I was 8.
That's a pretty specific about.
Yeah, I was 8, and I remember that I had my very first intro into horror was Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I bought that at my school's book fair, and so I was like, oh, scary stuff's kind of cool. And this was back during turndial TVs.
Okay.
And it was on channel 12 on my turndial TV in my bedroom. It was I'll never forget this. It was a cloudy day in October. And I was just flipping through the channels, and it started at the scene. Oh God, what's her name? The nurse, the hot tub nurse, when she's trying to like not give her friend a ride home, which was so shitty. And I was like, well, what's this about? And that's, back then you didn't have the guide. You couldn't start from the beginning or anything like that. You just flipped through until you found something. And I clicked on that, literally clicked on my turndial, and the rest is history. I mean, I fell in love with horror that day, more so than I already was, like horror as a visual medium. And it's been ever since.
So were you alone when you were watching it, or was there somebody that was with you?
No, I was by myself. I was a loner when I was a kid.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. And it's funny to start with Halloween 2. I mean, obviously you didn't have the choice, because I remember that. For me, it was channels 11, 13, 24, 36. That was it. That's all I had. So I remember exactly what you're talking about with that. In Halloween 2, there's a lot of effective scenes in this movie. While it may not be my favorite of the franchise, I can see why it's so loved by others. Which scene would you say it was, Gabi, that affected you the most from Halloween 2?
Oh, when Lori is all drugged up and she's limping in the hallway, and she sees Michael way at the other end of the hallway, and the camera gives that effect of the haze, like that drugged haze.
Mm-hmm.
And she's trying to run and she can't because her ankle's sprained, and she's grasping onto the wall, but she's trying to run and he's just walking.
Yeah.
And it was like, I mean, as an 8-year-old, you're like, who is that? You know, and it was just like, this is like all of my stories are coming to life right now. Yeah.
Right.
That was,
And he was still the boogeyman at that point.
yeah.
You know, at this point in the ever changing Halloween franchise, he was still just the boogeyman at this point. And I mean, eventually in this movie, they say that he was Laurie's brother or whatever the fuck they ended up doing. But, you know, I think that, well, like, again, I'm not a huge fan of Halloween 2. I love that you love this movie. Like, I love that. But for me, it's a little too slow for my liking. But the kills in this movie are phenomenal. There are so many good kills in this movie.
So good.
And that's what puts this above some of the other Halloween films, in my opinion. So, Gabi, which kill would you say is the one that affected you the most in Halloween 2?
He turns her face into overboiled ramen. That was,
yes.
that was also my first, I think that's the first kill that I ever saw.
Mm-hmm. Wait, in the background, you get that shady, you know, Michael killing the naked dude,
yeah,
and then boiling her face. And I had somebody else on the channel that this was their first horror movie, and they explained it perfectly. Usually, Michael isn't as mean in the first couple films as he was in this kill. Like, he was just mean in this kill and brutal, and usually that's was always my problem with Myers, was he was just boring to me. Like, he was just stab, boring.
yeah.
But this kill is brutal, like, and the way he's cooking her while drowning her, it's a gruesome way to die. So, Mikey, I know I give you a lot of shit, buddy. Props on this kill, my friend. You and that Shatner mask got it right on this one.
It was so good. I almost think that, like, this might be one of the scenes, and I'm not giving Halloween 2 too much credit. I know that it's not the best, but I think this might be one that kind of cemented the whole, if you have sex, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
And I think that the reason, knowing now what I know about Michael Myers, is I think that maybe, you know, part of the reason that he was so brutal with that nurse is because of his sister.
That's very possible too.
Yeah.
And
that he's just triggered by somebody getting laid. I mean,
I understand.
I don't know.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
These slashers are the biggest cock blocks in the whole world, man.
Seriously. Yeah.
So we know which scene it was that affected you the most. So we know which kill affected you the most, but Halloween 2 obviously is part of a very big franchise, which is still growing to this day. By the time this episode airs, Halloween Ends will have already been released. But it's an ongoing franchise. And if you think that this is the last Halloween movie they're ever going to do, I have some swampland to sell you, because it's not. This is the last Blumhouse Halloween film. These rights will be sold to someone else, and we'll get another story, I promise. But in the world that we're at right now, at the time of filming, it is Halloween Kills is the last Halloween film that's been released. In the Halloween franchise to date, which is your favorite Halloween film?
Oh, wow.
And why is it Halloween 3? No, I'm just kidding.
Call Boomer for that one.
We've had that, because I'm a big Halloween 3 guy. Like, I'm so weird because I love Halloween 3. I love Halloween H2O. Like, that's my bread and butter right there.
Okay.
And
okay.
I get a lot of people that are like, wow, those are two of my least favorites. And I'm not a Halloween purist. So I don't hate Resurrection the way that everybody else does. I
loved Resurrection.
Yeah, it's a fun movie for me. When I watch it,
Resurrection was amazing.
Yeah. And it cemented forever that Jason could fuck Michael Myers up, because if Busta Rhymes could whoop Michael's ass, Jason could whoop Michael's ass. So it cemented in history forever that Jason whooped that ass. So maybe that's why I like Resurrection so much. But what is your favorite in the franchise?
I mean, it's hard for me to pick one, because as I was discovering all of the Halloween movies, they were coming out, they were churning them out. So I saw Halloween 2 on you know, whatever local channel was playing movies on a Saturday afternoon. And this was in the, not to age myself, this was in the very golden age of the video store. So when I realized that like horror was something that I was super into, and this was also the beginning of the Sci-Fi Channel. People forget that the Sci-Fi Channel didn't start until later. That wasn't something that came with cable. Like that came along. And it was, so I saw Halloween 2 first, then I saw Halloween on the Sci-Fi Channel. And then it was every Friday night you went to the video store and you picked something. So I knew that I liked those. And Halloween 3, the cover never appealed to me. I never watched it. I skipped right to 4. And no judgment, I love 4 and 5. I love Rachel and Tina. Tina's costume in 5, I am done. Someday I will recreate that outfit before everything starts to fall. I swear to God, I'm doing it. Even with the black hair, I'll do it.
I think 4 is probably one of the, when it comes to quality of film, I think 4 is one of the best in the franchise. 5, I could kind of do without the cult shit. I think it's one of the worst endings, but I love Jamie Lloyd.
Yeah.
I think that Danielle Harris as a young lady kills it, especially being a young mute, the way that she's still able to pull you in.
Oh, she and, like, the scene so well. Yeah.
Oh, and the scene where she's climbing up the duct and the knife getting stabbed through, like, that was such a dangerous scene because
they not put yourself in the shoes of like a fucking 9-year-old.
And when they were filming, they were using a real knife at that point. Yeah, that was not a fake knife. Like that was that would never happen today. Like a stunt like that could never be allowed today.
One wrong move, and this poor little girl is never gonna walk the same for the rest of her life. But to pick a favorite, it's hard for me. I am unabashedly I'm a Halloween girl. I'm not a Friday the 13th girl. I think that those are the two that are most like, which one are you? You have to pick a team. And I'm a Halloween girl. If I have to pick an absolute favorite, it's going to have to be the original.
Okay.
It's strictly based on the fact that whether it's your first watch or your 90th watch, I mean, I've seen that movie so many times, I can recite it. Which, by the way, I met Annie Brackett and Sheriff Brackett a couple weeks ago. And it was
so awesome.
Cool. Yeah, it was so cool. And I have a funny story about Sheriff Brackett, but from the con. But when you're watching it, you feel like you're watching a classic film, like a Gone with the Wind or a Wizard of Oz or It Happened One Night of horror. Like you're watching something that from the beginning and for the rest of our lives is going to be iconic. I recently showed Halloween to my 14-year-old niece, and even she was like, you know, this is really old, but it doesn't feel old. And I'm kind of creeped out. And there's not that much gore. Right. There's not that really much that happens. Halloween is a really slow burn. But it does it right in that it burns the entire time. It's just slow. And I think that there have been very few horrors that have been able to imitate or duplicate that since then. And when you can watch something that back when I first saw it, it wasn't that old, and know that like this is something that people are going to be watching forever. It's just to go back and you never forget your feeling. I personally will never forget my feelings when Annie gets strangled in the car. When she jumps up from the back seat and that sound, the music, and he strangles the fucking shit out of her. Amazing. Amazing. I mean, and when he poses her, the photo that I got from Annie Brackett is her posed on the bed. She signed that one with Judith Meyer's headstone behind her. Yeah. She's very nice.
That's legit. And I've said this before, like, I'm not a huge fan of Halloween, and I've said that numerous times, but one thing I can say, I've heard people say it's the original slasher. It's not.
It is not. That is true.
Psycho, Black Christmas. I will say is Halloween perfected what the slasher should be, where in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, you don't see the mother till the very end when it's the reveal of Norman. And in Black Christmas, you never see Billy. You see his eye through a crack in the door. What Halloween did was made it so you've seen the slasher just as much as you've seen the final girl and you've seen the victims. And it perfected that in between of who the slasher is and who his victims are. Yeah. And I feel like that is the formula. That's where you could say this is what started the slasher genre, because this is the formula that is still being used today when it comes to slasher films. And without Halloween, we wouldn't have a Friday the 13th. We wouldn't have a Nightmare on Elm Street, I truly believe. You know, a lot of these later Scream would never exist for sure.
Never in a million years.
And I think, you know, and I go back to Halloween wouldn't exist had we not had Psycho. I think Psycho paved the way for Halloween. And, you know, we got to remember these things. And I think that Halloween perfected, it really did what you should do in a slasher. Just speed it up a little bit and cut some of your scenes a little bit, because you let them draw out for way too long, even when you don't need to. But I'm not here to bitch about Halloween 78. I'm here to talk about your experiences. And we know that personally, Halloween 2 was the first horror movie that you have ever seen. So, Gabi, I do want to throw you a little bit of a curveball here for a second. My little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Gabi? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
My favorite horror movie of all time is House LLC.
See, and I know you got a story about that. I wasn't going to tell it during the bio. I knew I was going to ask you this question. So you have a pretty cool story about that. You want to tell us about it real quick?
I don't know if it's cool or if it shows what a creeper I am.
No, it's cool.
I know that you do this too. I mean, I'm personally, Boomer and I don't make any money off of any of this. Like, this is what we do for fun, and we just have a blast with it. And it doesn't matter. This is our hobby. And it's the best hobby that you can have in the world. And we love doing it. And, but it does sometimes, and I think you'll agree with me, doing all of the things that we do, podcasting and writing and advertising and, you know, going and guesting and doing all of these things, sometimes it does start to feel like a job. And it is my second job to watch horror. And when you've been watching horror for so long, after a while, it's like, you know what? It can entertain me completely, and I will always be entertained by horror. Horror is my favorite thing in the whole wide world. However, I can't be scared anymore. I've seen it all. You've done it all. I've seen it all. I'm over it, but I can still have a good time with it, because a lot of people forget that horror is just supposed to be fun. And if you can keep that in your head, you can still watch it, even if you're jaded or over it, the scares and whatever. And I thought I was. And I was completely sucker punched by House LLC. I watched it because I had nothing else to watch. And it had been on my Amazon recommendations for months. And I was like, you know what? It's kind of a weird title. I'll try it. Whatever. I have nothing else to lose. It was the middle of the afternoon. To this day, I have a hard time getting up in the middle of the night to pee or to get a glass of water. I will not get a glass of water because you have to go downstairs for that. I will not. I can't. That movie, I was in tears. I had tears in my eyes watching that fucking clown, the dread, everything about that movie, it to me was just absolutely fucking, because my favorite is A Haunting. And that movie it hit every single mark for me, like a whack-a-mole game. Like, it didn't just hit the mark, it slammed it, and it just brought it home. Yeah. And I just became obsessed with these movies. And I said, from the first time I saw that movie, which was August of 2017, from the first time I saw that movie, I'm going to find as much as I can. And it's the first movie that I ever said this about. I want to know as much as I can about the making, the filming, the whatever. And one day I just happened to stumble upon the fact, I live in Pennsylvania. The movie was filmed in Pennsylvania at a location that's about a little less than 2 hours away from me, which if you live in a state like Pennsylvania, it's a big state, a 2-hour drive isn't far for us.
No.
You know, because we don't have a lot of traffic either. So to go 2 hours, you're going a pretty good distance. I found it, and it turns out that it was filmed at a working yearly haunt called Waldorf Estate of Fear. If anybody is ever in Williamsport, in Pennsylvania, over the month of October, fucking go. It's in Lehighton, Pennsylvania. Go. It's so good. But we'll get to that later. I found it. I found the address. And then, of course, when you Google the address, the website comes up. I contacted them and I said, listen, House LLC is my favorite movie in the whole wide world. My birthday's on Friday. Can I come and take pictures? I don't want anything special. I just want to take pictures. I have a podcast. I'll put it on my podcast Instagram because that matters. And they said yes. So I did. And that was in July. And then in October, so as soon as I did that, I followed them on Facebook. And then in October last year, it just popped up on their Facebook that the producer of Hell House was going to be there on this certain Saturday night. And I was like, grab my best girlfriend, we're going. And we did. Yeah. And when we got there, it turned out that it wasn't just the producer, Joe Bandelli. It was also Stephen fucking Cognetti, the writer director, was also there. And it also turned out that they were there because they were down the road earlier that day filming on their new movie. And it was like, oh my God, like I have to stay here. I have to find them. And this particular haunt you can tour. If anybody loves Hell House as much as I do, one of the haunts is the Abaddon Hotel. You walk through the Abaddon Hotel. Huh. Holy shit. We actually met, my girlfriend and I, we met these guys who have Haunt Hunters. Look them up. Haunt Hunters, whatever. I don't know their whole name. But they were there filming an episode for their YouTube channel. And they were talking to us and they were like, listen, we know everybody here. We'll take you guys through and we'll yell ahead so that you can look around and you can see. So not only did I get to do the haunt at the Abaddon Hotel, I got to actually make everybody stop. They didn't turn the lights up for me, but I got to walk through the kitchen, the bathroom, the dining room. I got to go up in the attic and I was not in a hurry. We got to get you through for the next group. It was just, the actors were so sweet and nobody jumped out and distracted me from the fact that I was walking through the fucking Abaddon Hotel. I stood at the foot of the stairs where that fucking clown stood.
That's so awesome.
I stood in that alcove where that fucking clown stood before he turned his head. They asked me several times while I was there if I wanted to go in the basement. No. I've seen that movie too many times, and I know it's fiction, but I'm not taking my chances. I have a child, and so I didn't do it. But so that was really cool. But I met the owner of the haunt, who happened to be kind of a big deal in the movies too. Angie. And but I got to talk to Stephen and Joe, and it's the only time in my life that ever I blacked out sober. That I walked up to them, I said, I love you guys so much. I have a podcast. It's called Horror Haven LLC, and the LLC at the end is because of you guys, because it's my favorite movie. And we talked, and the last thing that I remember is I said that, and Stephen Cognetti goes, you have a podcast? Can I jump on? And I was like, next thing I knew, I was in the parking lot, knees shaking, sweating, crying, looking at my girlfriend and going, did I cry in front of them? And she was like, no, you did great. And I was like, oh my God. So, but I did. Wherever I went, I would ask the actors at the end, because there's always that last scare. I would ask them like, did Stephen and Joe come through here yet? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, I'll stand out here for a second. And then somebody would walk by and be like, they're over at that one. So I would go over to that one and I would miss them. It was terrible. I'm horrible at stalking, by the way. And so I actually, for my first interview, my first celebrity interview was my dream interview with Stephen and Joe.
Amazing.
They were the coolest. They are the coolest nicest guys that you'll ever meet in your life. I was so sick when we did that interview. If anybody ever finds it on Horror Haven LLC, we're still on some platforms. I was so sick the next morning I ended up in the emergency room.
Wow.
Yeah, I was deathly ill. And I somehow, the adrenaline, whatever, it was like, I'm not canceling this.
Right.
You know,
oh, trust me, I get it.
Yeah. So my very first interview, and it's so funny because, not to call him out or anything, Booms, you know I love you. Booms gets so nervous. Boomer gets so nervous whenever we have interviews or do anything like that. And it's like, I don't. And it's not because I'm super confident. It's just, I already did the best one that I'm going to do. I did the one that I wanted. And it's kind of like, I already peaked. It's all downhill from here. Whatever you want to talk about, whoever you want to talk to, it's cool. I don't care. And which, by the way, Najara Townsend from the Stylist is going to be on the show next month. So not you, Najara. I love you. You're not downhill, I promise.
Right. No, but I get what you're saying though. Like you have those people that like, for me, that's Devin Sawa. Like I will get him someday and it's going to be the most amazing time. Huh?
You look kind of like him.
Oh God, I didn't know I was that sexy. That dude, like, look, I'm 100% straight. I would fuck Devin Sawa. Devin, if you ever watch this, I'm sorry. I don't mean it. I do mean it. But if you're offended, I don't. No, Gabi, I do real quick. I want to say thank you so much for coming on here. And I should have said this at the beginning, guys, but all of Gabi's social media links, as well as the link to the podcast, are all down in the description. So make sure you're giving her a follow. And you should already be subscribed to Podcast in the Woods, but make sure you do it again anyway, because they're amazing if you're not already there. But before I let you go, Gabi, what I want to do real quick is bounce back to Halloween 2. And I think I know the answer, but I still got to ask. What we're going to do is rank this on a skull count. Now, we're not judging this movie on acting, production, score, direction, nothing like that. What we're doing here is strictly ranking Halloween 2 on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Gabi, what would your ranking of Halloween 2 be?
It's a 5.
I knew. Like I said, my script says I have to
spread my love from horror fiction, horror writings to horror cinema.
Yeah.
It opened my mind. I mean, this movie is probably the most influential movie in my life.
Mm-hmm. I knew it was, but I gotta ask. So I've had an amazing time getting to know you. Every time we get to work together, I love you a little bit more. And it's always a real pleasure to work with you. And anytime Ashley and I get to work with you and Boomer, we consider that a great fucking day. So to be here hanging out. Oh my
God, us too. Let's do something soon.
Oh, we'll be doing something to these people that are watching. They've already seen it. We're going to be doing our top 10 worst horror movies live in 2 weeks. And I can't wait for you guys to watch that. But don't go anywhere, Gabi. I got a couple more questions for you.
Okay.
Everyone else, as always, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.